Hey Rayleigh, and welcome back to another message from your father. So we were looking at Esther yesterday. So we saw the story of Esther, all the ups and downs and craziness, and yet how God still used that and used, again, that great discomfort that Esther and Mordecai experienced and still used that for good and used that entire situation to do a 180 for the Jews in that area. So we saw that, and today we're going to look at a very different story. Now, there's a good amount of action in Esther. In Job, today 1 through 4, there's not a lot of action. There's a lot of conversation. I mean, this is a book predominantly about discourse, just a big conversation. Most of the action really happens, I want to say, in like the first two and last two chapters. It's very discourse heavy, very conversation heavy in the whole middle of the book. And it's not a short book, but 1 through 4 is what we're going to be looking at today. And we will look at Job, his 4 friends, and then the conversation they have. And if you've read the story before, or if you're familiar with it, you might be tempted to say, isn't there 3 friends? Well, there's a 4th person that speaks, but we're going to look at him very, very last. So I don't know, it may not be his friend. It doesn't specifically call him out as a friend, but very, very important for him as well. But first, we're going to see the back and forth between Job and his 3 friends. Then we'll hear from the 4th, but that's not until the end of the book. So today, Eliphaz is the friend that we're going to hear from. So Job chapter 1. In the land of Uz, there was a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and he owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys, and had a large number of servants. He was the greatest man among all the people of the East. His sons used to take turns holding feasts in their homes, and they would invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. When a period of fasting had run its course, Job would send and have them purified. Early in the morning, he would sacrifice a burnt offering for each of them, thinking, "Perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts." This was Job's regular custom. One day, the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came with them. The Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Satan answered the Lord, "From roaming through the earth and going back and forth in it." Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil." "Does Job fear God for nothing?" Satan replied. "Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands, so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. But stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." The Lord said to Satan, "Very well then, everything he has is in your hands, but on the man himself do not lay a finger." Then Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. One day, when Job's sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, a messenger came to Job and said, "The oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing nearby, and the Sabaeans attacked and carried them off. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, "The fire of God fell from the sky and burned up the sheep and the servants, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, "The Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties and swept down your camels and carried them off. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, yet another messenger came and said, "Your sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, when suddenly a mighty wind swept in from the desert and struck the 4 corners of the house. It collapsed on them, and they are dead. And I am the only one who has escaped to tell you." At this, Job got up and tore his robe and shaved his head. He then fell to the ground, in worship, and said, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave me, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised." In all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. Chapter 2. On another day, the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them to present himself before him. And the Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Satan answered the Lord, "From roaming through the earth and going back and forth in it." Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil, and he still maintains his integrity, though you incited me against him to ruin him without any reason." "Skin for skin," Satan replied. "A man will give all he has for his own life, but stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face." The Lord said to Satan, "Very well then, he is in your hands, but you must spare his life." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and afflicted Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. Then Job took a piece of broken pottery and scraped himself with it as he sat among the ashes. His wife said to him, "Are you still holding on to your integrity? Curse God and die." He replied, "You are talking like a foolish woman. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" In all this, Job did not sin in what he had said. When Job's 3 friends, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, heard about all the troubles that had come upon him, they set out from their homes and met together by agreement to go sympathize with him and comfort him. When they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep aloud, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads. Then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him, because they saw how great his suffering was. After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. He said, "May the day of my birth perish, and the night it was said, a boy is born. That day, may it turn to darkness. May God not care about it, and may no light shine upon it. May darkness and deep shadow claim it once more. May a cloud settle over it. May blackness overwhelm its light. That night, may thick darkness seize it. May it not be included among the days of the year, nor be entered in any of the months. May that night be barren. May no shout of joy be heard in it. May those who curse days curse that day, those who are ready to rouse Leviathan. May its morning stars become dark. May it wait for daylight in vain, and not see the first rays of dawn. For it did not shut the doors of the womb on me, to hide trouble from my eyes. Why did I not perish at birth, and die as I came from the womb? Why were there knees to receive me, and breasts that I might be nursed? For now I would be lying down in peace. I would be asleep and at rest, with kings and counselors of the earth, who built for themselves places now lying in ruins, with rulers who had gold, who filled their houses with silver. Or why was I not hidden in the ground, like a stillborn child, like an infant who never saw the light of day? There the wicked cease from turmoil, and their weary are at rest. Captives also enjoy their ease. They no longer hear the slave drivers shout. The small and the great are there, and the slave is freed from his master. Why is light given to those in misery, and life to the bitter of soul? To those who long for death that does not come, who search for it more than hidden treasure, who are filled with gladness and rejoice when they reach the grave. Why is life given to a man whose way is hidden, whom God has hedged in? For sighing comes to me instead of food. My groans pour out like water. What I feared has come upon me, and what I dreaded has happened to me. I have no peace, no quietness. I have no rest, but only turmoil. Chapter 4. Then Eliphaz the Temanite replied, "If someone ventures a word with you, will you be impatient? But who can keep from speaking? Think how you have instructed many, how you have strengthened feeble hands. Your words have supported those who stumbled. You have strengthened faltering knees. But now trouble comes to you, and you are discouraged. It strikes you, and you are dismayed. Should not your piety be your confidence, and your blameless ways your hope? Consider now, who being innocent has ever perished? Where were the upright ever destroyed? As I have observed, those who plow evil and those who sow trouble reap it. At the breath of God they are destroyed. At the blast of his anger they perish. Yet lions may roar and growl, yet the teeth of the great lions are broken. The lion perishes for lack of prey, and the cubs of the lioness are scattered. A word was secretly brought to me. My ears caught a whisper of it. Amid disquieting dreams in the night, when deep sleep falls on men, fear and trembling seized me, and made all my bones shake. A spirit glided past my face, and hair on my body stood on end. It stopped, but I could not tell what it was. A form stood before my eyes, and I heard a hushed voice. Can a mortal be more righteous than God? Can a man be more pure than his Maker? If God places no trust in his servants, if he charges his angels with error, how much more those who live in the houses of clay, whose foundations are in the dust, who are crushed more readily than a moth? Between dawn and dusk, they are broken to pieces. Unnoticed, they perish forever. Are not the cords of their tent pulled up so that they all die without wisdom? So again, we've kind of set the stage, and we're just seeing the foundations for this conversation. And this conversation is going to have a lot of back and forth, a lot of Job's friends speaking, Job's reply, his other friend speaking, Job's reply. So we'll see a lot of that. But as we're looking at that, it's easy, and rightly so, to feel sorry for Job. I mean, again, looking at the prologue, the very start of chapter 1, we see that Job was so blameless in God's sight. He is a righteous and holy man that it doesn't say that he does great wrongs. He appears to be a good man, and yet so much terribleness has happened to him. But then we look at his friends who are attacking him, and we say, oh, God, these guys are kind of the worst. Like, they're kicking him when he's down. But recognize that these people, these friends of his, sat with him. And I want to say that's chapter 2. There we go. Chapter 2, verse 13. They sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was. These are good friends. Really, when you're thinking about this, when you read Job, don't just discredit Job's friends thinking that they are overly harsh. These are people who love him greatly. Think about your friends. Who of your friends would you sit completely in silence with day and night for 7 days, for an entire week, and not say a word just because your heart hurts so much for the pain that they are going through? So these are dear friends. And what they say, they do have some valid points in here. I don't want to completely throw out everything that they say. So recognize that this is a heavy, heavy conversation, but it is so, so important. Anyway, know that I love you, and I will be praying for you, Rayleigh. For anyone else that is watching, know, as always, I appreciate you so, so much. And I'll plan on seeing you tomorrow. Have a good one.